Good morning, everybody. It's a real privilege to take part in a TED event, speaking alongside a highly group of talented people to a really skilled audience. And I'm sure that everyone here today could be speaking on their own area of expertise. Over the next few minutes, though, I wish to explore 3 ideas as to how you have become so skilled. As a teacher, I believe that the most important thing that children can learn today is how they can become successful. How can they develop the skills of success in themselves? What are the secrets of success? To me, this really is the future of learning. Yes, I can teach them mathematics, but who knows what technology there will be in the future to solve those problems? Yes, I can teach them how to get a grade C or a grade A, but there's changes in examinations around the corner, and what will that mean? I work desperately hard as a school leader to give the pupils the paper qualifications for the next stages in their lives. But most of all, I wish to teach them how to be successful. The 3 ideas that I wish to talk about are: number 1, neuro-linguistic programming; number 2, the art of deliberate or purposeful practice; and number 3, mindsets. But most important of all, I wish them to link them together, as I passionately believe that if we see those concepts together in a connected network, that's how we can best teach young people the skills of success. My first experience of NLP in an educational context was through the work of Alistair Smith, who wrote this fantastic book. Sometimes you read a book and it just stays with you and it becomes part of your life, and that was the case with me. I'd just become the head of maths in a school where the children's experience of maths was a really negative one. They'd had one supply teacher after another, and their belief was that the maths classrooms was somewhere where you went to misbehave. It was tough. I knew the first thing I had to get right was what was going on in my classroom. And then if I could get it right in my classroom, I could move it on to the suite of classrooms. Now, I can still remember that first lesson, and it really sticks with you. It had took me 10 minutes to try and get a group of Year 9 children quietly organised so they were ready to begin learning. They just saw it as a joke. I was just the latest teacher stood before them, but I managed it. I got them quiet, and I was just about to speak. And then, almost in a scene from a film, a Year 9 girl bounced into the classroom. I could see the fight in her eyes. Her eyes were sparkling. She'd obviously had a confrontation with another teacher. She looked at me and the whole class went quiet. The whole class went quiet. And to me now, this just seems so ridiculous what she said, but at the moment it kind of made me shake. She shouted, "This thong is stuck right up my bum." The whole class erupted into hysterics, and I had to start all over again. The vein in my forehead was throbbing, and all I wanted to do was shout. All I wanted to do was shout. I'd received some really good advice from the PE teacher before I taught my first lesson. He said, "Get so close to them, shout that spittle emerges in their face." Oh, yuck, yuck. Instead, I thought, no, the idea of the reptilian brain stuck in my mind. If I shouted, if I yelled, what was I going to create? I was going to create fight, flight, or freeze. And that wasn't going to get the children learning. That wasn't going to build the bridges I needed to do. I made some kind of joke, I can't remember what I said, the class laughed and I tried to teach them some maths. We never really formed a great relationship, but they realised that I was straight, I just got on with it and they had to just follow the rules. Accelerated learning and NLP both say that we need to focus on the positive messages. They can learn rather than they can't. So over the next couple of years in that school, I relentlessly focused on the positive. My classroom was covered in posters like a student's bedroom. Some were handmade, some bought, and in pride of place, over my whiteboard was my own sign, "I can succeed today." It stayed there for the 5 years I was at the school. The first step in teaching children the keys to success is the basics of NLP. Focus on what you can do, not what you can't, and keep telling yourself day after day. This was what I told myself when I was head of maths in that school. I can do it. I can teach these children. They can get their grades. I have the feeling that in some schools, the method of discipline, the speed of sanction is so speedy that some of the youngest children are under daily stress. These are not disruptive children. These are children who want to do really well, but live continually in the reptilian mind about what happens if they forget their homework, have incorrect uniform or the wrong equipment. However, that's another TED Talk. So, if we can deliver our education in a positive way that is underpinned by the best ideas of NLP, what then is the next step of children learning to be successful? The next idea is purposeful practice, which can be encapsulated in the quote on the board. It is the willingness to engage in hard or quite often very boring practice that distinguishes the very best. Now, when I grew up, the standard belief was that the very best was supremely talented. It was a God gift, a God-given gift. It was something inherited. Therefore, yes, you could get better at practice, but that was never enough to be the best. This is one of my heroes from when I was growing up. This is Ian Botham in the 1981 Ashes. Now, when I was a child, I couldn't believe that practice could create that. That was just God-given, it must be. And I can still remember walking into town, stopping at different electrical shops as Botham's innings went on. The other hero that I had as a child was John McEnroe. And the same kind of thing here, the same kind of thing. He stands so close in, it's untrue. Ivan Lendl doesn't have chance to really play. Now, that surely can't be created with practice. That can't be. That's just God-given. And that was the belief that I always had when I was growing up. Yes, I practiced. In my cricket, I would spend hours at a cricket field just dragging anybody along to throw cricket balls at me. I can remember running down the drive, bowling at a bin on the drive, pretending I was Malcolm Marshall, my hero at that stage in my life. I played table tennis at a decent standard. We had lessons. There were 16 children, always all practicing the same routine. And 30 years on, I can still remember the routine that we practiced. Short serve, backhand push, and the server hitting a forehand topspin. However, individual coaching that focused on individual weakness or strengths, well, that was few and far between and only for the wealthy few. There was no doubt that practice did make a difference in comparison to those who never practiced at all. But it didn't seem to enable any big leaps in performance. In fact, I even found sometimes that the more I practiced, I didn't get any better. In fact, I even got worse, because I was just repeating the same thing over and over again. The idea of practice was not really discussed in any length, though I did read occasional stories. I read the story of Ivan Lendl, who was the player playing against McEnroe before. He was not even the best player in Russia in his teens, but he went on to become the world's best through a phenomenal work ethic. And the statistics there on the board show that actually overall he achieved more success than the flamboyant John McEnroe. The other example that I can vividly remember reading about was about a gentleman called Jeff Boycott. When he was preparing to play cricket in India and Pakistan, him and some of his friends polished the wooden floor of the gym so that the ball would bounce off it as though it was in India or Pakistan. But those kind of stories, they weren't greatly hailed by the press. Instead, it was the individual genius of the tabloid favourites that was very much to the fore. The first occasion when I heard a different view was during teacher training, when I attended a half-day seminar entitled Ability. 2 education lecturers gave the view that there was no such thing as ability. It was about the environment a children was brought up in and the teaching that they received, whether at school or at home. I can remember railing against this. It couldn't be right. I commented it wouldn't matter how much I practiced. I'd never become an international sportsman. The lecturers responded to my views and those of others with patient, weary wisdom, born out of an unshakable belief that they were on the right track. They were far too humble a pair to claim they were right. That was 20 years ago, and now my view has greatly changed. Why? Why, may you ask? First, it's life experience that's made me consider what is practice. How can it be made more worthwhile? In my teaching, when I'm teaching equations, I want the children to practice, practice, practice. Those children who really did that would make huge strides and would overtake the pupil who appeared naturally talented at 11 but did not retain the work ethic. Those of us who are teachers, there's some classes that you really remember and they stay with you for your whole career. I had one maths class that I started teaching halfway through year 7 and I taught them all the way up through year 11. And there's 3 children that really stick in my mind. First of all was Kate. Kate worked so hard. She had that enquiring mind and was always asking questions of me. It was no doubt fostered by her parents at home. I used to really enjoy the parents' evening meeting when I met Kate's parents because we just have a really good conversation about school and about life, and it was one of those conversations that I never wanted to end and kind of slowed up my queue of other parents waiting. Kate did amazingly well. She worked so hard, and by the end of year 11, she got her string of A stars, went on to a really good 6th form and did very well, and is now a primary school teacher. And that kind of anybody who taught her, I know, is really pleased that that's what she became. That was Kate. Then there was Lee. Lee had what he believed was a natural gift. He'd been told at primary school that he was really good at maths. He didn't practice. He wouldn't follow the methods. He could, at the start of year 7, work from the question to the answer with no notes at all, no workings. Which was probably a good job because his written skills were appalling. He just hadn't developed that side of himself at all. He was in year 7 probably in the top 3 or 4 children in maths results. And over the 3 years that I taught him, I constantly encouraged him, I constantly cajoled him to try and set out workings, to follow methods. Every year, when we took the maths exams and we looked at the scores, his position in the year group dropped. I insisted on keeping him in my top set because I knew that there was something there. I just needed to keep plugging away. During year 10, he eventually left the school, and I remember receiving a phone call after year 11 from his mum asking for his maths coursework back. Unfortunately, he got his grade D. He hadn't even got a grade C. Yet actually, from his starting point, we were expecting an A or an A star, but we just couldn't get him to practice. Then there was my biggest success in my whole teaching career. There's a little boy called Paul. Paul arrived at the school with a Key Stage 2 Level 3. Now, those of us who are in education will know that's below national average. So not expected to do very well. In fact, should have gone in one of the lower groups, but we insisted on having mixed ability teaching in year 7 so we could see how the children got on. Paul from that age worked really hard. He kept trying, he kept pushing himself. He was always the last one to leave the classroom. And by the end of year 7, he'd made the most progress than any other child in the school. Statistically, not good enough to put him in the top set, but I decided from that progress he should go there. He should be alongside those other children. He was really quiet, a really shy, quiet boy. I always sat him next to Kate and Sally on one side, Paul and John on the other side. And the two of them pushed each other. They pushed. And by the end of year 11, Paul had got his A star. from his phenomenal work ethic. I'm sure that this was a child whose primary teacher would have not said he was talented in any way, but from that work ethic he got there. Then, the biggest impact since then have been these two books, and I'm sure many of you will have read them. Outliers by Gladwell and Bounce by Matthew Syed. These turn the talent myth upside down. They do this by highlighting all the stories of some of the gifted individuals I'd previously used in my own arguments. Tiger Woods, Mozart, explaining how they achieved so much at an early age due to the incredible number of hours that they spent on their practice. The 10,000 hours rule was often quoted. But it was also the type of practice they engaged in. This was not just the repetition that I'd done as a child. This was practice with feedback on how they could improve. These are books which I regularly read sections of in school assemblies, as I constantly wish to present the view to the children that I work with that you can always get better and find a way forwards. Finally, my final idea. What really interests me at the moment as a teacher and a parent is if I can set the conditions for NLP, if I can work on these skills with my children and my pupils, I can talk to them about purposeful practice and show them this is the route to success. But what separates the children from those who can practice and those that can't? In my opinion, mindsets is the final part of the triangle. Over the last month, I've been deployed into schools working with children on their maths. We've decided in the trust that I work in that the most practical thing that I can do is help children on a day-to-day basis in this run-up to exams. And it's been really interesting working with those children. These are children from very challenging backgrounds, but in a small group, they want to learn. They want to do well. But they don't always seem to be able to get there. And I think it's because of this fixed and growth mindset idea. I think many of the children that I work with are in the fixed mindset. These are students in their hearts that believe that basic qualities are fixed and they can't be changed. They believe talent is the key to a student's success. Last week they were telling me about a student who did phenomenally well, and their comment is he must be really clever. I said, no, he's practiced, he's learnt. And they did accept that idea. They just said, oh yeah, he's been working 4 hours a night all the time since he was in year 7. But I could never do that because I've got a social life, was their reply. I said, well, never mind 4 hours. How about 20 minutes a night from now on over the next 2 weeks? Do that. That will make a difference. You can do it. It's about effort. It's about what you're prepared to put in. I think in schools, what we've got to do is be teaching the triangle of ideas. What we've got to be doing is teaching children NLP, modelling in action, and being relentlessly focusing on the idea of practice and effort, not talent. We need to be setting up systems to develop a growth mindset. We need to praise and reward the efforts of the child, not the result. We need to encourage risk, in the words of Edison. Many schools are taking on the ideas of mindsets. They're teaching mindsets in their schools. But we also have to show pupils that success is not a linear journey, but instead the effort that is applied will help them move forwards in different ways. There's one word that we can use to promote growth mindset. It's yet. You haven't achieved your grade C yet. You haven't got your grade 5 music yet. You haven't scored a century yet. So what about you? What can you do? If you don't work in the education sector, think about growth mindsets. When you praise your children, your friends or your colleagues, tell them how pleased or impressed you are with their efforts. And if they haven't achieved, if they are down because they haven't achieved their goals, remember, they haven't achieved them yet. That is the future of learning. Thank you very much for listening.